In this video, we're going to take a look at using a completed Automata simulation file in order to get measurements from the cam profiles for displacement, and we could use these to create a motion graph for our particular cam that we're analyzing. So as we take a look, we're going to end up, we've got all four cams installed into the box from previous videos, and we're going to edit what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to edit this ruler zero spacer and make sure that the zero edge here is going to be in line or aligned with the top of the follower that we're looking at. I'm only going to do this for one cam because the process is the same. It's just going to be repeated down the line. But once you get an idea for one cam, you're going to be able to apply it for future cam designs. Before we get going into that though, I want to take a look at the model history tree down in the bottom of your screen. So if you notice, when we added in the cams, you'll see there's a component icon. When I left click on it, it'll actually select the component, highlight in the graphics window. You'll also have it'll show the joint, so it's keeping track. So this was the first cam I installed or that I brought in. This was the joint that I used to install the cam inside the box. Here was the next cam and the joint, and we just continue on down the line. So we added a few of these. Now in this file, you're going to notice there's these little icons here that have like three kind of rectangles all kind of bunched together, and there's a little plus sign down at the bottom to expand, and these are called groups. So groups kind of help keep the timeline a little bit cleaner. That way you don't have a bunch of kind of the sketch, extrude, 3D model feature icons all stretched out across the bottom of your screen. And I'll show you how to put a group together. So I'm going to select by left clicking on the first icon. I'm going to hold the shift key on my keyboard, and I'm going to click the last icon there, and it's going to highlight all of these. So from one all the way down to the end. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say create group, which you'll see there's that little icon there that matches what's in the model history tree. Now you're going to see here is the group. If I hit the little plus sign, now those icons are grouped together, and it just kind of cleans up the timeline a little bit more, especially when you got a lot of different things going on in a very large assembly. It makes it very easy to go through and to kind of, keep things very neat and orderly. So along with that, if we go through and we want to take a look at editing our ruler spacer, I'm going to just select the icon. If I don't know which group I'm in, here's what happens. When I just click on the component, these three little dashes will show up above, kind of slash marks show up right above the group that it's tied to. So I'm going to expand this group. When I do that, I can see here's the component, which is called ruler spacer. Here was the first sketch that created the component. Here's the extrusion. Here was where they created the text. Here's where they cut the text into the part. And then here was the joint, which is a rigid joint that they used to place the spacer on the top face of the box. So what I'm going to look for is this extrusion. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to right click and I can say edit feature. And what I really want to do is I want to go through and use the little arrow, and I want to drag that down so that way it's level with the top of our follower. Now if I'm unsure or I want to make sure I'm really precise, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn this over to the side, and I want to use the measure tool. And I'm going to check to say show snap points. And I'm going to choose the very top center of the follower like so. You'll see the number 1 noting that. And then I want to click right down below it. And the only thing is though, is you're going to have to be careful a little bit, because you'll notice that point is I thought I was clicking right here, but it actually points out. And this measurement is actually with the diagonal is longer than what I need it to be. So here's maybe what I need to take a look at. Let me see if I can click the top face. Let me first restart the selection. Click the top face, and then let me see if it'll let me click around to the bottom edge of the follower. And that's exactly what I did, is I just clicked around the bottom edge of the follower guide that sits on top of the box. So if you look, it does give me two values. They give you one at kind of a diagonal from the outside to the outside on the circle, but then they also give me from a center to a center, and that's 1.875. So your measure tool can kind of help you out with that. So now if I want a precise measurement, I can right click and say edit feature. I can do 1.875, and if I take a look from the front, there I'm matching up perfectly with the top. So again, the measure tool allows us to go through and pull some of that information, especially since this was a file that we didn't create. Now, what I kind of take a look at is you can kind of see when you click and drag. I'm going to kind of turn this into this position. When you click and drag, you got to make sure you have the contact on. But here can be a little bit of an issue, and you can see even now. So my cam profile is kind of locked up on me. So some of this, if I'm analyzing only one cam, I may want to, let's collapse that previous group and expand the last one. I'm going to go ahead and suppress the heart cam. I'm going to suppress the snail cam and suppress the hex cam. So if you got a computer that kind of does that, and if you notice now, I'm not getting locked up. So it's a lot of processing power. So if I'm on another computer, this may work with all four, but really that's not exactly what I want. So over here in my browser on Revolut 9, I want to make sure I say go to home position, and then that way it goes through and moves it back to 0. Now the only issue with this is when you're getting measurements is you can click and drag your, so the first tick mark on your crank gauge is going to be 40, you start looking at this, so about halfway in between be about 45 degrees. Here's 90, and then there's where you can kind of go through and have that. So here if I go to 180, I can pull that down, but if you notice, it doesn't like to stay at 180 degrees. It always wants to go through and kind of, because it doesn't like just sitting on top of that kind of pointed edge. There's really not a lot of surface area for it to sit on, and that's why it's kind of wanting to snap back and forth. So what you might have to do is kind of take a look at your cam profile, and this is what I've been doing. You need to make sure the contact stays on, but the thing is, if you say go to home position, and if you said, go to edit the joint, maybe we change this to 180 degrees. And this is just something, but here's the only issue that I've kind of found, is that in Fusion, you'll notice the contact is not updating when you do that. So the cam actually gets embedded inside of the roller. So here is kind of the workaround for this. Let me go ahead and go back to edit the joint and put this back to the 0 position. Okay, you'll notice the follower goes back to its 0 position, and it also deals with the joint limits and things like that. Without getting too far into the weeds on this, I'm going to kind of turn this, and I want to right click on Revolut 9 and say animate model. And you're going to notice that here you can kind of see where the crank arm is. For the most part, it stays in the position until it hits 180 degrees, and you can watch the top of the follower. And again, on these measurements, you're going to the 1/8 of an inch. So there's 1 inch, half of that would be 1/2, half of that's 1/4, and then this one here, you're looking at 1/8. So you're seeing that when it gets down to 180 degrees, it's coming up to that 1/4 inch measurement displacement, and that's exactly what's happening. But for the most part, the follower stays, and as you kind of turn this to the side and take a look where you can see the angle gauge, the follower stays in the 0 position only when it hits that 180 degree measurement, and you can kind of tell that from its point there. So this is one way to kind of get around that kind of issue. Again, this is a Fusion kind of processing limitation, and this is something that, it's not your fault. It's nothing you're doing that's incorrect. It's just one of those things that, we're just working with some limitations of the software until newer updates come out, and some different things will, kind of improve the Fusion 360 user experience. But other than that, this is kind of how you can use one, look at the groups, find those down in the bottom, how to get your cam measurements, create your motion graph, and be able to, even if you create like a custom cam that would fit inside the box, you're not sure what the motion graph would look like, that's how you can generate those, and then that way you can create your own custom cams, modify them, or do anything as such. So this video will finish out the series on activity 417, the Automata cam simulation, and you can always apply this in the future projects in IED, and be able to use this in project 425, the Automata